Beloved chosen one, you need to hear this with a steady heart and an open spirit, because this message is not arriving by accident and it is not brushing against your life by chance. You are standing in a moment that carries weight, and what you do with this moment matters more than you realize right now. There are times when heaven speaks in a whisper, and there are times when heaven presses a message so deeply into your path that you can no longer pretend you did not see it. This is one of those times. God is making it plain to you that there is a blessing with your name on it, a turning point prepared for your life, a release that can shift what has been heavy, delayed, blocked, and buried. But with that promise comes a warning that you cannot afford to ignore. If you dismiss what God is placing before you, if you keep treating conviction like background noise, if you keep turning away from what your spirit already knows is true, you can miss the very thing you have been praying for. You have asked for clarity, you have asked for breakthrough, you have asked for favor, healing, restoration, and open doors. Yet the truth that many do not want to face is that blessing often arrives wrapped in instruction. It does not always come as immediate comfort. It does not always come in the form of ease. Sometimes the greatest blessing of your life begins with a command that stretches you, humbles you, slows you down, and calls you out of every pattern that has kept you spiritually sleepy. The danger is not only open rebellion, the danger is subtle neglect. The danger is the small delay that turns into a habit. The danger is saying, "I will obey later," when God is asking for surrender now. The danger is convincing yourself that one more compromise will not matter. One more distraction will not cost you. One more act of disobedience will not touch your destiny. But heaven sees farther than you do. And God is warning you because He loves you too much to leave you asleep at the edge of your own miracle. There is something powerful about being chosen, but there is also something costly about it. You are not called to drift through life half awake, carried by moods, opinions, and impulses. You are called to discern, to listen, to move when God says move, and to stop when God says stop. That is why this message may stir something deep inside you. It is not meant to flatter your emotions. It is meant to awaken your obedience. You are not here to be entertained. You are here to be confronted by grace. You are here because God is refusing to let you lose what He intended to place in your hands. And sometimes mercy does not look soft at first. Sometimes mercy sounds like a warning. Sometimes love sounds like a trumpet. Sometimes the kindness of God comes wrapped in holy urgency because the blessing ahead is too great to forfeit and the trap ahead is too dangerous to ignore. You already know there has been tension in your spirit. You already know that something has been tugging at you, asking you to pay attention, asking you to come higher, asking you to stop tolerating what once felt normal. That uneasiness has not been random. That stirring has not been emotional weakness. That unrest has been divine interruption. God has been dealing with you in quiet moments, in late hours, in passing thoughts that return with unusual force, in the sense that you cannot keep living on the surface while your soul is being called into deeper alignment. Do not push that away. Do not silence that voice with busyness. Do not drown that holy discomfort in noise, habits, entertainment, or delay. The thing that makes this hour serious is that your next season is connected to what you do, with what God is saying right now. There are people who miss their moment not because God failed them, but because they kept expecting the blessing without honoring the instruction attached to it. They wanted the promise without the pruning. They wanted the crown without the crushing. They wanted the open door without the inner change required to walk through it with wisdom. But you are being called into a different response. You are being called into immediate alignment. You are being called into the kind of obedience that does not negotiate with fear, pride, comfort, or public opinion. This is where destinies are protected. This is where cycles are broken. This is where generations can change because one person decides that hearing God is more important than pleasing the crowd, feeding the flesh, or staying where things feel familiar. That is why you must not treat this as a passing word. Let it settle in you. Let it search you. Let it shake loose every excuse that has made disobedience seem harmless. God is not trying to shame you. He is trying to rescue what is precious. He is trying to position you for what you have not yet seen. There is a blessing that can alter the direction of your life, and the enemy would prefer that you keep sleeping through the call, doubting the message, or postponing the response. But you are not meant to lose your greatest blessing because of hesitation. You are not meant to stand at the threshold and turn away because obedience feels inconvenient. You are not meant to confuse delay with safety when delay can sometimes become the very doorway through which loss enters. So let this be the moment you take seriously what your spirit has been whispering for days, weeks, maybe even months. Let this be the moment you stop brushing off divine conviction as emotional intensity. Let this be the moment you say yes before you understand every detail. Yes before the path feels easy. Yes before everyone around you agrees. And as a sign that your spirit is awake to this warning and ready to receive what God is saying, type 777 in the comments. Not for show, not from habit, but as a declaration that you will not ignore the voice that is trying to preserve your future. Because the truth is simple and sobering. Some blessings are lost in a single moment of refusal. Some doors close because they were dishonored. Some seasons stretch longer because instruction was delayed. But that does not have to be your story. Not now. Not if you listen. Not if you respond. Not if you let this warning become the beginning of your turning. God is still speaking to you with mercy. God is still reaching for you with purpose. God is still placing before you life, peace, increase, and divine alignment. But you must not ignore him. You must not harden your heart. You must not let this pass like every other message you heard and forgot. What stands before you is too important. What is at stake is too great. And what God desires to release in your life is too beautiful to lose through neglect. You need to understand that this warning is not falling into an empty place. It is falling onto a life that has already been marked by God. Before people misunderstood you, before they overlooked you, before they measured you by what they could see on the outside, God had already placed his hand on you with purpose. That is why this message carries such weight. You are not being warned because you are forgotten. You are being warned because you are chosen, and chosen people are often standing closer to destiny than they realize when the pressure around them begins to rise. This is where the life of David begins to move beside your own path in a quiet and powerful way. David was not the one people expected. When the prophet Samuel came to the house of Jesse, everyone looked at the obvious sons first. They looked at the strong ones, the visible ones, the ones who seemed to fit the image of leadership. But David was not even brought into the room at first. He was out in the field, tending sheep, carrying out a hidden assignment while others stood where they could be seen. Yet heaven was not confused. The God was not searching for what looked impressive to people. God was looking at the heart. The one left outside by human judgment was the one already chosen by divine sight. That matters for you because one of the enemy's greatest tricks is to make you believe that delay means rejection, or that hidden seasons mean you have been passed over. But David's life proves something deeper. Being unseen by people does not mean being unseen by God. In fact, Many of the people God raises are first shaped in places where applause cannot reach them. They are prepared in silence. They are strengthened in obscurity. They are taught to hear God's voice before they ever stand in front of crowds. So when this message tells you not to ignore what God is saying, it is not asking you to chase attention. It is calling you back to the truth that your life carries a sacred assignment, even if much of that assignment has been formed where nobody clapped for you. The moment David was called in from the field, everything shifted, but not in the way people might imagine. The oil came upon him, yet the process did not instantly become easy. He was chosen, but he still had to walk through time, opposition, testing, and hidden development. This is where many people become confused in their own spiritual journey. They assume that if God has spoken, then everything should become smooth at once. But divine selection is not the end of the process. It is the beginning of responsibility. Once God marks your life, the call to obedience becomes even more serious, because what you carry is no longer casual. It is holy. David's story speaks directly to the tension you have felt. You may know that God has placed something on your life, yet your outward circumstances may still look ordinary. You may feel the stirring of destiny, yet still find yourself in routines that seem small compared to the promise in your spirit. That was David's reality too. He was anointed, but then he returned to the field. He carried a word over his life, but the throne did not appear overnight. This is why you cannot measure God's work only by immediate results. Sometimes the blessing begins the moment heaven speaks, even when the visible evidence is still unfolding slowly in front of you. What God was building in David during those hidden days was not just a future king. He was building a heart that knew how to trust him in private. He was building courage where no one was watching. He was teaching David how to protect what had been placed in his care. A lion came, then a bear came, and David learned that faithfulness in secret places matters to God. Those battles in the wilderness were not interruptions. They were preparation. They were the kind of preparation that would one day stand behind public victory. You have lived through hidden battles too. Some of them never made sense at the time. Some of them felt unfair, lonely, and exhausting. But now you need to see them through a different lens. What if those seasons were not proof that you were abandoned? What if they were proof that heaven was training you? What if the pain, the waiting, the tears, and the discipline were all shaping you for a blessing too large to be carried by the person you used to be? This is why ignoring God's voice now would be such a serious loss. You have not come this far just to turn away when the deeper meaning of your journey is beginning to rise into view. There is a verse that anchors this truth with unmistakable clarity. 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 7 says, "Man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart." That is the difference between human judgment and divine choice. People may have made assumptions about you based on timing, appearance, weakness, delay, or lack of recognition. But God's eye has always been fixed on something deeper. He has been reading the places no one else can read. He has been watching the choices you make when nobody notices. He has been measuring the posture of your heart. So as this message continues, you must hold on to that truth. The warning is serious because your calling is real. The instruction matters because your life is not random. Like David, you may have been formed in the field long before being brought into the room. Like David, you may have been underestimated by people who could not see what heaven had already declared. And like David, you are now standing in a place where what happens next will depend on whether you treat God's voice as sacred or optional. The field was not the end of David's story, it was the proving ground of it. And what God began there did not disappear just because the journey was long. In the same way, what God has spoken over you has not disappeared because the road has been difficult. The hidden place still matters. The preparation still matters. The heart still matters. And if you refuse to ignore this moment, you will begin to understand that the blessing ahead is connected to the quiet places where God first set you apart. You begin to understand, as David did, that being chosen does not remove the hidden battles. In many ways, it explains them. After the oil touched his head, the pressure did not disappear. It deepened. The field was still there. The sheep were still there. The ordinary duties were still there. Yet something inside him had changed. Because once God marks a life, every quiet place becomes a classroom. Every lonely hour becomes a place of formation. Every private test begins to reveal whether the heart will stay steady when no visible reward has arrived yet. That is where this message meets you now. You may be in a season that feels painfully unnoticed. You may be carrying a promise that looks too large for your present surroundings. You may be asking why the road has remained narrow, why the answers have not come faster, why the blessing seems to hover just beyond reach. David knew that tension. He had been told something real by heaven, but he still had to wake up and tend what was in front of him. He still had to guard small responsibilities with a large heart. He still had to trust that obscurity was not a punishment. It was preparation. There is something holy about the way God shapes people before He reveals them. He teaches them not to depend on applause. He teaches them not to mistake recognition for approval. He teaches them to draw strength from His presence rather than from the shifting voices of people. David learned that among sheep, under open skies, with only the sound of wilderness around him. He learned how to worship before he learned how to rule. He learned how to defend what was entrusted to him before he was given anything greater to carry. That is why your hidden season matters so much. It is not empty. It is not wasted. It is where your reflexes are being trained. When the lion came, David did not know that one day he would face a giant in front of a nation. When the bear came, he did not know that the courage formed in secret would later become public testimony. He simply responded to the moment in front of him with faithfulness. That is often how God's preparation works. You are not shown the full map. You are given a present assignment and invited to honor it. The enemy wants you to despise these smaller moments because he knows that neglected obedience weakens future strength. He wants you restless, distracted, and bitter in the middle of preparation. He wants you believing that nothing important is happening, but heaven sees the full design, even when you only see one narrow piece of it. That is why ignoring God's voice right now would be so costly. It is not only about one decision, it is about what that decision shapes in you. Every time you obey, you become stronger in the direction of your calling. Every time you delay, something in your momentum is interrupted. David's greatness did not begin on a battlefield before crowds. It began with repeated acts of unseen obedience. It began with a heart that stayed available to God when nobody was celebrating Him. In the same way, your next season is being formed by what you do in this one. The hidden place is producing something. The quiet place is proving something. The hard place is refining something. And maybe that is why this part of the message feels so personal. You have fought battles nobody fully understands. You have stayed standing in hours that could have broken you. You have had to keep believing while your hands were still empty and your future still looked unfinished. But like David, you are not being defined by the size of the field around you. You are being shaped by the presence of God within you. That is why you cannot let weariness make you careless. You cannot let delay make you casual. You cannot let the silence of the season convince you that heaven has stopped speaking. David played his harp in places that looked too small for the destiny he carried. Yet that music was preparing his inner life. He learned tenderness and strength together. He learned how to pour out his heart to God without losing courage. He learned how to be both humble and bold. Those lessons would matter later, because the throne required more than charisma. It required depth. It required a heart that had already been broken open before God. In your life, too, the blessing ahead will require more than desire. It will require maturity. It will require spiritual weight. It will require a soul that has learned to remain anchored when feelings rise and fall. So do not dismiss this season. Let it teach you. Let it empty what pride built. Let it strengthen what fear tried to weaken. Let it pull you closer to God's voice than ever before. And if this message is meeting you in that hidden place, helping you put language to what your spirit has been carrying, then let your response be simple and sincere. You can like this message. Share it with someone else who is quietly fighting their own wilderness battle. And subscribe so you can stay connected to words that keep pointing you back to truth. And for those who feel led to support this work more deeply, there is also a way to give through the description. Not as pressure, but as a willing act of partnership. Because what David discovered in the field is what you are discovering now. The hidden season is not where destiny dies. It is where destiny learns how to breathe. It is where your hands become steady. It is where your spirit becomes clear. It is where you stop needing constant proof because you begin to trust the God who chose you. The battle may still be quiet, but the shaping is real. The waiting may still feel long, but the blessing is still moving. And if you remain faithful here, what is formed in secret will not stay secret forever. The hidden season teaches you strength, but the next challenge teaches you discernment. That is what David begins to face as his path moves beyond the field. Once a chosen life starts carrying visible signs of grace, noise begins to gather around it. Opinions multiply, pressure increases, distractions become more sophisticated. What once looked like a simple journey with God now becomes crowded by voices that all want to define who you are, how you should move, and when you should act. This is where many people lose ground, not because they were never called, but because they allowed surrounding noise to become louder than the voice that first anointed them. David felt that pressure in deeply human ways. His brothers did not immediately celebrate his courage. When he arrived at the camp and saw Goliath defying the armies of the living God, he heard criticism before he ever stepped onto the battlefield. Eliab spoke with anger and suspicion, as though David's presence itself was a problem. That is often how distraction works in the life of a chosen person. It does not always appear as obvious temptation. Sometimes it comes as misinterpretation. Sometimes it comes as being judged unfairly by people who only see your arrival, not your preparation. They see a moment and assume pride, while God sees the long history of hidden obedience that brought you there. You have known something like this. There have been moments when your spirit was ready to move, but the atmosphere around you was full of doubt, commentary, and emotional interference. People may have questioned your motives. They may have treated your faith as impulsive, your conviction as intensity, or your obedience as foolishness. David could have turned back in that moment. He could have let the accusation of his brother settle into his heart and poison his focus. He could have spent his energy defending himself instead of remembering why he came. But he did something simple and powerful. He turned away from the wrong voice. That is a word for you right now. Some of your greatest progress will begin when you stop arguing with voices that were never assigned to confirm you. Every distraction does not deserve your response. Every misunderstanding does not need your explanation. Every opinion does not deserve space in your spirit. David knew that the issue before him was not family tension. It was the giant standing in defiance against what belonged to God. If he had become trapped in personal offense, he would have missed the larger battle. And that is exactly what distraction tries to do. It pulls your eyes downward when they need to stay lifted. It invites you into emotional side roads so you never fully confront the real obstacle in front of you. Then came another voice. Saul looked at David and measured him through natural logic. He saw youth, inexperience, and apparent weakness. He saw reasons why David should step back. Even when Saul finally allowed him to go, he placed his own armor on David, trying to prepare him with someone else's pattern. This part of David's journey reveals another subtle form of distraction. Sometimes the threat is not criticism. Sometimes it is imitation. Sometimes people do not try to stop you completely. They simply try to make you move in a way that is not true to how God prepared you. David understood something many people never learn. What looks impressive can still be wrong for you. Saul's armor carried weight, status, and appearance, but it did not fit David's history with God. David had already been trained in another place, through another process, by another hand. The sling looked smaller, but it matched the preparation heaven had given him. So he took off the armor. That was not rebellion. That was discernment. He refused to let another man's method disconnect him from his own testimony. You must learn this too. There are distractions that look respectable. There are pressures that seem wise on the surface. There are opportunities, relationships, habits, and systems that others swear by. Yet they dull the clarity of your calling because they are not built for the way God shaped you. You cannot afford to carry armor that weakens your spiritual movement. You cannot afford to wear what impresses people if it silences what God taught you in secret. The chosen life requires courage, but it also requires a ruthless kind of inner clarity. You must know what belongs to your assignment and what does not. When David finally stepped toward Goliath, he did not do so as a reckless boy trying to prove himself. He moved as someone whose inner hearing had survived every outside voice. That is why his steps carried authority. He was not led by mockery, not led by fear, not led by borrowed identity. He was led by confidence in the God who had already met him in hidden places. That is how you overcome the distractions around your calling, not by becoming louder than everyone else, but by becoming more anchored than the noise. And this is where the lesson becomes practical in your daily life. One of the real struggles many people carry right now is mental clutter. Too many voices, too much input, too little stillness. A tired mind can make spiritual focus harder than it needs to be. And that is why some people look for tools that help them slow the noise and regain concentration. One product some viewers may want to look into is the Genius Wave, also called Genius Song, which is presented as a short audio designed to support focus, creativity, mental clarity, and calmer thinking through sound-based brainwave entrainment. It is described as a simple daily listening practice of about 7 minutes, and many are drawn to it because it aims to help with scattered attention, stress, and difficulty concentrating. If that sounds useful to you, you can check the official information through the description or the pinned comment. Be careful with imitations and fake copies, and only use the official source if you decide to try it. But beyond every helpful tool, the deeper truth remains the same. Your calling will always require you to turn away from the wrong voice so you can hear the right one clearly. You reach a moment in David's journey where everything narrows into a single decision, And this is where the weight of obedience becomes unmistakably clear. The battlefield is no longer a distant idea. It is right in front of him. The giant is not symbolic anymore. It is visible, loud, intimidating, and relentless. Goliath stands there day after day, speaking fear into the atmosphere, shaping the thoughts of everyone who listens too long. And this is where you begin to recognize something deeply familiar, because you have faced voices like that. Not always in physical form, but in thoughts, in circumstances, in repeated patterns that try to convince you to shrink back, delay, or surrender what God placed inside you. David could have waited. He could have told himself that someone more qualified would eventually step forward. He could have reasoned that it was not yet his time, that the risk was too great, that the odds were too uneven. But that is exactly how destiny slips away from many people. Not through open rejection of God, but through quiet hesitation in moments that require immediate trust. The longer Israel listened to Goliath, the more normal fear became. What once shocked them slowly turned into a routine. And that is one of the most dangerous shifts that can happen in your life. When what should be confronted becomes tolerated, and what should be challenged becomes accepted. David refused to let that happen inside him. He remembered something others had forgotten. He remembered what God had already done. When he spoke to Saul, he did not begin with the size of the giant. He began with the testimony of the lion and the bear. He reached back into his hidden history and pulled forward evidence of God's faithfulness. That is how faith works in critical moments. It does not ignore reality, but it refuses to let present fear erase past deliverance. David understood that the same God who carried him through private battles would not abandon him in a public one. This is where your own decision becomes clear. You are not standing empty-handed. You carry history with God, even if you have not always recognized it. There were moments you survived that should have broken you. There were situations that resolved in ways you could not fully explain. There were times when strength appeared in you that did not come from your own ability. Those were not random outcomes. Those were signs of God's hand on your life. And now, just like David, you are being invited to draw from that memory instead of surrendering to present pressure. When David stepped forward, something shifted in the atmosphere. Not because the giant changed, but because someone finally aligned with what God had already declared. Fear had been filling the space for too long, but faith entered and disrupted it. And faith does not need majority support to be powerful. It only needs agreement with God. That is why this moment in your life matters so much. You may feel outnumbered by doubt, by delay, by internal questions. But alignment with God outweighs every opposing voice combined. David's words carry a clarity that cuts through fear with precision. He does not speak as someone trying to gather courage. He speaks as someone who has already decided. He says that the battle is not his alone, and that changes everything. Because when you understand that your obedience places you inside God's movement, you stop measuring outcomes by your own limitations. You begin to see that what stands in front of you is not greater than the one who stands with you. There is a verse that captures this moment with unmistakable authority. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 47 says, "The battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." That is not just a statement about David's situation. It is a principle that reaches into your life right now. The outcome does not begin with your strength. It begins with your alignment. When you step where God is leading, you step into a battle that he has already taken responsibility for. But notice something important. David still had to move. The promise did not remove action. It required it. He ran toward the giant. He did not drift forward slowly. He did not wait for a perfect emotional state. He moved with decision. That is the part many people hesitate on. They want certainty without movement. They want assurance without action. But the blessing on David's life met him in motion, not in hesitation. This is where the warning from the beginning returns with greater clarity. Ignoring God does not always look like turning away completely. Sometimes it looks like standing still when you are being called forward. Sometimes it looks like endless analysis when you already know the next step. Sometimes it looks like waiting for comfort when God is asking for courage. And in those moments, delay becomes a silent form of disobedience. David's victory did not come from complexity. It came from clarity and obedience. A stone, a sling, a step of faith, and a heart aligned with God. That was enough. And what seemed impossible to everyone else collapsed in a moment that changed the course of his life. The giant fell, not because David was the strongest, but because he was the most aligned. Now you stand in your own version of that moment. The voice of fear may still be speaking. The situation may still look large. But the question is no longer about the size of what stands against you. It is about whether you will move in agreement with what God has already shown you. Because on the other side of that movement is not just victory over one obstacle. It is the unlocking of a path that hesitation could never reveal. And that path will keep unfolding as long as you keep choosing obedience over intimidation, truth over noise, and God's voice over every threat that rises to challenge your peace. David did not win because he never felt the weight of the moment. He won because the weight of God's promise was greater than the weight of fear. That same invitation stands before you now. You are not being asked to understand everything at once. You are being asked to trust what God has already made clear. The greatest blessing of your life may be waiting behind one brave act of surrender, one holy decision to stop delaying, one moment where you finally say yes without bargaining. So do not let the giant keep talking you out of what heaven already approved. Stand up in the strength God has formed in secret, and keep walking forward because your obedience is opening more than one victory. It is opening your next season. After the giant falls, you might think the hardest part is over. But David's story shows you something even deeper. Public victory does not always lead straight into public rest. Sometimes the greatest test begins after the breakthrough, when the promise is real but the fulfillment still seems delayed. David was no longer just the shepherd from the field. He had stood before a nation and proven that God was with him. Songs were rising about his courage. Doors had opened. His name was known. Yet instead of stepping immediately into peace, he entered a long and painful stretch of waiting, jealousy, pursuit, and restraint. This is where many chosen people become confused, because they assume that once God confirms the calling, the road should become simple. But David's life reveals that heaven often speaks most clearly in the waiting. Saul's jealousy turned David's success into a threat. The one who should have honored what God was doing instead tried to destroy it. David found himself hunted, misunderstood, and pushed into caves when he had already received the anointing of a king. Think about that. The oil had been poured, the giant had fallen. The songs had been sung, and still David was running through wilderness places. That is a hard truth, but it is a necessary one, because your own life may carry the same tension. You may have seen signs of God's favor, yet still feel surrounded by delay. You may know what God promised, yet still be living in a cave season where comfort feels far away and answers seem slow. But delay is not denial when God is still shaping the vessel that will carry the promise. David's waiting was not empty. Heaven was speaking inside it. In the cave, David learned things the palace could never have taught him too soon. He learned restraint when he had every reason to react. He learned humility when people were ready to force his rise. He learned how to trust God's timing more than human impatience. This matters because many people lose their greatest blessing not before the breakthrough, but between the confirmation and the fulfillment. They become tired of waiting, tired of being tested, tired of watching the promise unfold slower than expected, and they begin reaching for outcomes that God never told them to seize by force. David had moments when he could have done exactly that. There were times when Saul was within reach, vulnerable, exposed, and seemingly delivered into David's hand. Even the men around David thought the opportunity had come. They interpreted the moment as permission. They saw the opening and urged him to take it. But David understood that not every open chance is divine approval. Not every opportunity is a command from God. Sometimes a doorway exists only to reveal whether you will still obey when disobedience looks convenient. That is where this message lands with precision in your spirit. You may be in a season where impatience is whispering to you. You may feel the pull to make something happen, to force a result, to answer pain with flesh, to secure by your own hand what God said He would provide in His time. But David's life warns you that the method matters. The blessing is not only about arriving, it is about arriving without losing your soul on the way there. It is about refusing shortcuts that wound what God is trying to build in you. In the darkness of the cave, David cut off a corner of Saul's robe, and even that troubled his heart. That detail is striking because it reveals just how sensitive his spirit had become. He was not numb. He was not reckless. He feared stepping beyond what God permitted. That kind of reverence is rare, and it is one of the reasons David remained aligned even while waiting. He understood that he did not need to manufacture his own elevation. If God had truly chosen him, then God was also able to establish him. That is a lesson you need to carry right now. The waiting season is not proof that God forgot you. It is proof that some blessings are too weighty to be rushed. Heaven is not silent because it is absent. Heaven is often quiet because it is working beneath the surface, arranging what you cannot yet see, correcting motives, strengthening character, untangling dangerous attachments, and teaching you how to hold power without corruption. David was becoming the kind of man who could carry the crown without letting the crown become his god. This is why you cannot despise the cave. You cannot waste the wilderness by calling it meaningless. The hidden place after the breakthrough may be the place where your soul is protected most deeply. David wrote from those places. He cried out from those places. He learned to pour his fear, grief, exhaustion, and trust before God in those places. He was becoming anchored, not in applause, but in presence. And that is what keeps a chosen person stable when everything visible feels uncertain. The promise may seem delayed, but the inner life is being rooted. There may be days when you wonder why things are taking so long. There may be moments when you watch others rise faster, settle sooner, or seem to arrive with less struggle. David knew what it meant to live with the ache of timing. Yet he also learned that what God builds slowly is often what lasts most powerfully. The cave did not cancel the throne. It purified the path to it. And your waiting is doing something similar. It is teaching you to hear God's voice above the pressure of quick results. It is teaching you to move without desperation. It is teaching you that real blessing is not stolen. It is received. And if this message is strengthening you in one of those long in-between seasons, you can quietly like it. Share it with someone who is learning how to trust God in the delay. and subscribe so you can stay connected to more words that help steady the heart. And for those who have been blessed by this message and want to support this kind of work in a more tangible way, there is a giving option in the description. No pressure, only an open door for those who feel led to partner. Because David's cave was never the end of his story. It was the place where his motives were tested, his heart was softened, and his obedience was purified. And perhaps that is what God is doing in you right now. Perhaps heaven has not paused because it is withholding. Perhaps heaven has paused because it is speaking more deeply than before. In the waiting, your spirit is being tuned. In the restraint, your future is being protected. In the cave, the crown is drawing nearer, not farther away. So do not confuse delay with abandonment. Stay tender, stay obedient. Stay still enough to hear the voice of God in the dark, because what He says there will sustain you when the next door finally opens. By now you can feel the pattern in David's life becoming impossible to miss. God speaks, God confirms, God preserves. And still God allows seasons that require surrender deeper than simple patience. The cave taught David restraint, but the next stage of his journey taught him something even more costly. It taught him how to let go of the need to control the outcome of his own promise. This is where the blessing behind surrender begins to appear with greater clarity. Because surrender is not weakness in the life of a chosen one. Surrender is the place where self will stop interfering with what God has already decided to build. David had every reason to become hard. He had been anointed, tested, threatened, hunted, and delayed. He had served faithfully and still suffered. He had watched his path twist through pain when it could have moved in straight lines. Yet he kept returning to the same posture. He kept placing the matter back into God's hands. That is not easy to do when you are carrying both promise and pressure at the same time. It is not easy to release your timeline when every part of you wants closure now. But David's life shows you that there is a blessing that only opens to those who stop grabbing and start yielding. This becomes especially clear after Saul's life comes to its end. David does not seize the throne in a frenzy. He does not rush forward with arrogance, as though the years of struggle now give him the right to take whatever he wants. He inquires of the Lord. Even after all that waiting, even after all that pain, he still asks God what to do next. That detail carries tremendous weight. It reveals that David's deepest strength was not just courage, it was dependence. The anointed man still sought instruction. The man with a promise still waited for direction. The one with visible proof of calling still refused to move as though he belonged to himself. That is where surrender becomes beautiful. It is not passive, it is relational. It is the ongoing decision to let God lead even when you have enough experience to trust your own instincts. David could have leaned on memory, logic, or ambition, but instead he stayed teachable. He stayed low before God. And because he did, the blessing that came into his life was not merely an achievement, it was an inheritance received in alignment. There is peace in that kind of blessing. There is steadiness in it. There is less striving in what God places into surrendered hands. You need to hear that for your own life. Some of the tension you have carried has come from trying to hold too tightly what can only be received openly. You may be gripping an outcome, a timeline, a person, a resolution, or a dream so firmly that your own striving is exhausting you. But the blessing God has for you will not be improved by anxiety. It will not become safer because you force it. It will not grow purer because you manipulate the route toward it. There comes a point when obedience is no longer about fighting harder. It is about trusting deeper. David learned that surrender does not mean he has no part to play. It means his part is no longer driven by panic. He still moves, still inquires, still leads, still responds. But he no longer acts like everything depends on his ability to secure the promise. That difference matters. It changes the atmosphere of the soul. When surrender takes root, you begin to breathe differently. You begin to walk with less inner violence. You become less pulled by fear and more anchored in trust. The heart softens, the spirit becomes more discerning. And the blessing that once felt distant begins to approach without the taste of desperation attached to it. There is a verse that captures this spiritual posture with quiet power. Psalm chapter 37 verse 5 says, "Commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass." That is not just comforting language. It is a living instruction. Commit your way, not only your dream, but your way. Not only the outcome, but the process. Not only the desire, but the path. David's life teaches you that the blessing is not found only in the fulfilled promise. It is also found in becoming the kind of person who can trust God with the unfolding. And that is why surrender protects you. It protects you from becoming twisted by delay. It protects you from becoming proud when doors open. It protects you from reaching for things that look like blessing but are actually burdens. David received much, but he also had to learn how to carry what he received with reverence. Surrender made room for that reverence. It kept his heart aware that the throne was never an idol to worship. It was a stewardship to honor. This is the hidden gift inside surrender. It brings you closer to God than your plans ever could. When you stop trying to outthink every turn and instead place your way before Him, you begin to know Him differently. You begin to experience His timing not as cruelty, but as wisdom. You begin to see that what felt like delay was often protection, what felt like silence was often guidance, and what felt like loss was often the removal of what could not go with you into your next season. David's blessing did come, but not as a trophy snatched by force. It came through surrender, through inquiry, through restraint, through dependence, through the long shaping of a heart that kept returning to God. And that is the kind of blessing that lasts, not the kind you seize in panic, but the kind you receive with open hands after learning that God's way is higher, slower at times, but far more secure than your own. So as this journey continues, you can see more clearly now that surrender is not the enemy of blessing. It is often the doorway to it. The hand that opens to God is the hand most ready to receive from Him. And the heart that stops wrestling for control becomes the heart most able to recognize the gift when it finally arrives. The blessing behind surrender is real. But David's life also shows you the danger of drifting away from that surrendered place. This is where the message becomes more sobering, because even a chosen heart can grow careless if it stops guarding its inner life. Even someone who has seen God's hand, heard God's voice, and walked through powerful deliverance can still reach a moment where conviction is ignored, desire is indulged, and consequences begin to unfold. That is why this warning matters so much. The greatest blessing of your life is not only something you receive, it is also something you must remain aligned to protect. There came a season in David's life when kings went out to battle, but David remained behind. That detail is quiet, yet it carries enormous weight. He was not where he needed to be. He had entered a space of ease at the wrong time, and that misplaced comfort opened the door to compromise. This is how many spiritual falls begin. Not with a loud decision to abandon God, but with a subtle step out of alignment. A person stops watching carefully. They stop honoring boundaries that once kept them safe. They allow the flesh more room than wisdom permits. and what once would have troubled the conscience immediately begins to feel strangely manageable. David saw Bathsheba, desired her, took what was not his, and then tried to cover the sin that followed. One wrong step was followed by another and then another. That is the nature of ignored conviction. It rarely stays contained. It spreads, it complicates, it creates webs that did not need to exist. David was still king. He was still chosen. But in that moment, he was not walking in the clarity that had once defined him. The man who had trusted God in the field and waited on God in the cave now moved in secrecy, manipulation, and self-protection. This is why no one can afford spiritual pride. Past obedience does not give you permission for present carelessness. And this is where the warning reaches directly into your own life. There may be an area where conviction has already spoken to you, but you have been postponing your response. There may be a pattern you keep justifying, a relationship you know is pulling you off center, a habit that clouds your discernment, a compromise you call small because facing it fully would require change. But David's story shows you what ignored conviction can cost. It can wound peace. It can fracture intimacy with God. It can bring pain not only into your own life, but into the lives of others. Sin always promises control, but it produces ruin far beyond what the moment admits. Yet even here, grace does not disappear. God sent Nathan to David. That was mercy. Conviction returned in the form of truth spoken without disguise. David was confronted, and in that confrontation, the door to repentance opened again. This is one of the most important parts of the story, because it shows that when God warns you, He is not only exposing danger, He is extending mercy. He is interrupting destruction before it finishes its work. He is calling you back before the distance grows even greater. To be corrected by God is not rejection. It is evidence that He still desires your restoration. There is a verse that captures the breaking point of David's return. Psalm chapter 51 verse 10 says, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." That cry did not come from a man pretending he had made a small mistake. It came from a man who finally saw the depth of what had happened and knew that only God could restore what sin had disordered within him. David did not merely ask for better circumstances. He asked for a clean heart. He understood that the deepest issue was inside. That is the part you must not miss. When God warns you, He is not just trying to regulate behavior. He is trying to preserve the heart, because the heart determines whether the blessing can be held in purity. If the heart drifts too far, even good gifts can become dangerous. That is why repentance is so powerful. It is not humiliation for its own sake. It is a return to truth. It is the soul stepping out of concealment and back into light. It is the end of excuses. It is the refusal to keep losing ground where grace is still offering recovery. Perhaps this is the moment for you to become honest before God again. Not performative, not polished, honest. The kind of honesty David reached after the mask fell away. The kind that says, "I cannot heal what I keep hiding. I cannot protect the blessing while feeding the thing that threatens it. I cannot ignore conviction and still expect peace to remain untouched." This is where restoration begins. Not when the consequences vanish at once, but when the heart stops resisting truth. If this is speaking to your spirit, write, "I return now." Let that be your quiet declaration that you will not keep walking past the voice that is trying to bring you home. David's story did not end in that failure, but the pain it released was real. That is why this section carries such seriousness. Ignoring conviction has a cost. Delay has a cost. Hidden compromise has a cost. But the mercy of God is still reaching toward you before the full weight of loss settles in. The warning itself is mercy. The discomfort you feel is mercy. The truth confronting you is mercy. And if you respond now, the same God who corrected David can begin restoring you too, not by pretending nothing happened, but by cleansing what has been stained, renewing what has grown crooked, and teaching you again how to walk with a heart that stays tender before Him. What David's life shows you now is that falling is not the final lesson. Rising rightly is after failure, after exposure, after repentance. There comes a moment when a chosen heart must stand again, not in pride, not in self-defense, and not in denial, but in renewed alignment with God. This is where many people struggle. They know how to feel sorrow, but they do not know how to walk forward after sorrow has done its work. They either stay trapped in shame or they move on too quickly without allowing restoration to go deep. David's journey reveals another way. He shows you what it means to return to God, to be humbled without being destroyed, and to keep moving with a heart that has been broken open and made more honest than before. That is why this part of the message matters so much. The warning was never meant only to frighten you. It was meant to save you from permanent drift. And once a heart has truly returned, the next call is not to sit forever in the ashes of regret. The next call is to rise with a heart after God again. That phrase matters because David was never described as a flawless man. He was known as a man after God's own heart. That means the deepest truth about him was not sinlessness. It was direction. Again and again, through weakness and failure and correction, his heart kept turning back toward God. You need that truth for your own life. The enemy would like to convince you that once you have stumbled, your authority is gone forever. Your calling is ruined, and your future has been permanently reduced to the size of your worst moment. But David's story refuses that lie. The same man who failed deeply also wept deeply, repented deeply, and learned deeply, and then he did not become casual about sin, but neither did he let despair become his master. He returned to the God he had grieved. He accepted correction. He endured consequences. And still, in the middle of all that, God continued to work through his life. This is what real restoration looks like. It is not pretending the wound never happened. It is allowing God to cleanse the wound so thoroughly that truth begins to govern you more than appetite ever did. David was no longer the same man he had been before his fall. Pain had taught him. Mercy had softened him. Correction had deepened him. And that is often how God rebuilds a chosen life. Not by erasing the past, but by transforming the heart that must walk into the future. There is something strong and beautiful about a person who rises after being humbled by God. That person no longer depends on image. That person no longer trusts charm, appearance, or momentum alone. David had known public triumph early in life, but now he knew something deeper. He knew the cost of misalignment and the sweetness of restored fellowship. He knew that kingship without inner surrender was dangerous. He knew that a throne could never replace the nearness of God. So when you watch the later parts of his life, you begin to see a man who still battles, still leads, still carries weight, but does so with a different tenderness in his spirit. That tenderness is not weakness. It is strength purified. It is what happens when God has stripped away illusion. And maybe that is what he is doing in you. Maybe you are being called not merely to recover activity, but to recover purity of direction. Not just to feel inspired again, but to walk aligned again. To become someone whose heart is turned toward God in the quiet places, the ordinary places, the pressured places, the lonely places, and the visible places too. Because your calling does not only need your gifts, it needs your inner agreement with heaven. David's life proves that you can be corrected and still be called. You can be broken and still be rebuilt. You can be delayed and still be destined. But you cannot keep moving as though closeness with God is optional. That is the great lesson that rises out of every stage of his story. The field taught dependence. The battle taught courage. The cave taught restraint. The fall taught repentance. And now the restored path teaches alignment. A heart after God is not a heart that never struggles. It is a heart that refuses to settle permanently anywhere away from Him. There is a verse that captures this call with profound simplicity. Psalm chapter 86 verse 11 says, "Teach me thy way. O Lord, I will walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name." That prayer fits this moment perfectly. Unite my heart, because a divided heart is where delay grows, compromise grows, and confusion grows. But a united heart is steady. A united heart can hear clearly. A united heart does not keep bargaining with disobedience. David understood that what he needed most was not merely success or relief. He needed an inner life gathered back into wholeness before God. This is where your own rising begins, not by pretending you are strong enough alone, but by asking God to unite what has become scattered in you, to gather your desires, your thoughts, your fears, your motives, and your decisions under His truth, to make you one in direction again. Because that is how a person steps into calling with integrity, not through spiritual performance, but through inner union with what God wants. And as David's story nears this final stretch, you can see the mercy of God more clearly than ever. God did not stop working because David had stumbled. He kept shaping, correcting, restoring, and leading. The call on David's life was not carried by human perfection, but by divine faithfulness met with real repentance and renewed obedience. That same pattern speaks hope over you now. Whatever has threatened to divide your heart, God is still able to gather it. Whatever has made you hesitant, He is still able to strengthen it. Whatever has made you feel disqualified, He is still able to restore perspective and call you forward again. So you do not rise by denying what happened. You rise by returning fully. You rise by letting truth do its complete work in you. You rise by choosing once more to be a person after God's heart. And when that happens, you do not merely recover what was lost. You become more watchful, more tender, more discerning, and more ready to walk in the calling ahead with a depth that only surrender, correction, and mercy could have produced. Now you arrive at the final edge of this message, and the question before you is no longer whether God has been speaking. The question is whether you will carry what you heard into the way you live from this moment forward. David's life has walked beside you through every stage of this journey. In the field, you saw that being overlooked does not mean being forgotten. Before the giant, you saw that obedience must rise before fear becomes normal. In the cave, you saw that delay is not denial when God is still shaping the heart. In failure, you saw that ignored conviction can wound what heaven intended to bless. In repentance, you saw that mercy still reaches for the one who returns. And now, at the end, you see the truth that ties everything together. The crown comes after obedience, not before it. The blessing is not found in drifting. It is found in responding. That is why this moment matters so much. You are not leaving this message the same way you entered it. Something has been uncovered. Something has been named. Something in your spirit has been called to attention. Maybe it is an area where you must stop delaying. Maybe it is a decision you have feared making. Maybe it is a compromise you can no longer excuse. Maybe it is a calling you have been trying to keep at a safe distance because saying yes to God would change too much. But this is where the dividing line becomes clear. You can keep negotiating with what God already made plain, or you can step into alignment and protect the blessing that has been trying to reach your life. David did not become who he was meant to be in one dramatic instant alone. He became that person through repeated obedience, through hidden faithfulness, through restraint when shortcuts appeared, through repentance when he fell, through dependence when he was unsure, through surrender when timing tested him. That is how chosen lives are formed, not through perfection, but through continual return to God's voice. And that same invitation stands before you now. Return again, listen again, obey again, trust again. The next season of your life may be closer than you think, but it will not open through indifference. It will open through consecration. There are people who spend years asking God for a door while resisting the instruction that would prepare them to walk through it. Do not let that be your story. Do not miss the greatest blessing of your life because the final step required humility. Do not lose what could have been released through one surrendered decision. There are moments when heaven waits to see whether the heart is truly ready. Not ready to speak about faith, but ready to live it. Not ready to admire truth, but ready to submit to it. This is one of those moments. So let your heart become still before God now. Let the noise settle. Let the defenses fall. Let every excuse lose its grip. You do not need to impress God with polished words. You need to meet Him with honesty. And in that spirit, let this prayer rise naturally from within you. Lord, here I am. You have seen every hidden place in me, every fear, every wound, every delay, every struggle I tried to explain away. You have seen the parts of me that were faithful and the parts of me that were tired, distracted, and uncertain. I do not want to keep resisting what you are trying to do in my life. I do not want to lose the blessing attached to obedience because I held too tightly to comfort, pride, fear, or delay. Clean my heart. Steady my spirit. Teach me to hear your voice above every other voice. Where I have drifted, bring me back. Where I have hesitated, strengthen me. Where I have compromised, correct me with mercy. Where I have grown weary, breathe fresh courage into me. Make me willing to obey quickly and trust deeply. Protect the calling on my life from every distraction that would weaken it. Let my life honor you in private and in public. And if there is a blessing you have prepared for me on the other side of surrender, prepare me to receive it with humility, wisdom, and reverence. I place my way in your hands again. Lead me, correct me, and keep me close. In Jesus' name, amen. Let that prayer remain with you even after this message ends. Do not rush away from what God has been pressing into your spirit. Sit with it. Carry it into your day. Return to it when old habits try to call you back into numbness. The truth is that your future will not be shaped only by what moved you emotionally for one moment. It will be shaped by what you choose to obey after the emotion settles. That is where real transformation begins. And if this message has truly spoken to your heart, you can gently support its reach by liking it, sharing it with someone who needs this same warning and encouragement, and subscribing so you can stay connected to future messages that keep pointing you back to God's voice. And for those who feel led to support this work in a deeper way, there is also a giving option in the description. It is simply there for anyone who wants to help these messages continue reaching other hearts. Because in the end, the crown is not for the fastest, the loudest, or the most admired. It is for the one who stays yielded. It is for the one who listens when God warns. It is for the one who turns back when conviction comes. It is for the one who keeps choosing truth when compromise would be easier. The blessing has not been placed beyond your reach, but it must be met with obedience. And now that you know, now that your spirit has been stirred, now that the pattern is clear, do not turn away. Walk forward and guard what God has spoken. Stay close to His voice. And let your life become proof that what heaven warns, heaven also lovingly prepares you to overcome.